The next thing that we wanted to do, again, keeping it relevant to peer-to-peer learning and to your jobs in the field, is talk about the GROW model. A lot of the GROW model was covered in the pre-work, so hopefully you had a chance to review that. But we wanted to highlight a manager in the field and have someone discuss, how they've leveraged GROW model coaching in practice. So Summers, I don't know if we want to throw up this slide, but we are welcoming Ed to talk a little bit more about his experience with the GROW model and how he's used it to coach team members on his team. So Ed, I will throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. So, GROW model, as you all learned from our training, pre-work, is goal, reality, options, and way forward. I find this framework to be really helpful, especially when you're looking at planning around OKRs or other specific goals, maybe some sort of project goals or something like that. My team is a programs team, but we do have engagement with the field. And the one example that I came up with was we have an OKR for our team around services attached. So we want our partners to be engaged with our customers, with our sales team, with our professional services organization to help deliver services to our customers and grow those customers. Focused on that one goal with one of my team members, and as we talked about the reality, there's kind of two parts of the reality in the way I've used this model. One is understanding the reality from the team member's perspective. So what are their concerns? So when we talked about this service attach, some of the concerns a team member raised were, I don't work with partners every day, so how can I really influence this? Our channel partners are new to our sales team. They don't even have the relationships. Few partners are trained. We don't have a lot of the skills yet. And so we kind of talked about some of the concerns and just listen and be aware of those roadblocks, and also start to get some of their initial ideas that they have around solving the problem. Another really important part of the reality for me is to make sure that the team member understands how this particular goal fits in the broader context of our team's objectives and our organization and company objectives. So service attach, is critical to our partners' success. So that's a really important goal for our channel sales organization. But as we heard on Level Up a couple months ago, services in general are really critical to our success because they make our customers more sticky. They create growth opportunities. So by making sure the team member understands how this goal applies to the bigger reality of the organization, it makes them more relevant. And I also think it's important in creating an environment for cross collaboration, because you identify those common goals and then you can be working towards them together. So that context for me is one of the really important parts of the conversation. So then we talk through options. So how do we solve this? How do we get there? For me, it was acknowledging some of the challenges we have, but then starting to shift those towards the solution. So we talked about our partners not having a lot of partners that are trained. What kinds of things can we do that? Well, we have our certification program. How do we promote that? We don't have great engagement. This is when we were first getting started a couple of quarters ago. We don't have great engagement between our channel partners and our sales teams. What kinds of things can we do? And so in talking to this team member, came up with some really great ideas for our partners. Obviously, a lot of communication around certifications, communications around how partners can make money with services, with GitLab, some of the incentives we have, and also an important thing we started to work on was collaborating with our PS organization. Our PS organization has been a great partner in getting partners engaged, because we know we need them to scale our services. And so we started bringing partners in as subcontractors so they can learn, so they can get experience, so they have success stories to tell. And so we put together a plan around the partners and around our sales team. A couple of things that we did. We're doing a pilot of bringing partners into specific mid-market opportunities, which is something that came from the outside, but it's something that we're executing on. But also, this team member came up with an idea called speed dating. Give each partner 10 minutes to talk to specific members of a sales team, and kind of rotate several partners through so they can at least talk about their capabilities, start a relationship, and start to build a business together. And so with the way forward, we packaged that all together into an enablement component, an engagement component, and then a communications component, so that it's a really specific plan that we can look at specific metrics within those to make sure that we're achieving the overall OKR. So yeah, I found this to be really helpful because it does drive a good, complete discussion, and it's not overly complex. I think the team member can understand that, and we can all understand it. So I just want to share that opportunity or that example with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. And so just some key takeaways that, I heard from you is really the learning and listening up front is really key. And I think you mentioned that, the team members may even be sharing some ideas for options and the way forward in those initial conversations where they're digesting the problem. So really listening is super key, and regurgitating kind of what you heard back to the team member is helpful. And thank you for using the model in practice. When you use the model with your team, are you literally taking out the growth steps and saying let's walk through these stages, or how do you do it, and how do you facilitate that in practice?
To be honest, it just comes naturally. I think this is the way the conversation goes. Hey, here's what we need to accomplish. What do you think? And you get that feedback. You start to get some ideas. You start to get the concerns. And that's when I always like to, kind of introduce the reality. Hey, we still haven't, we don't have this capability on the team, or, we need to be aligning with this overall OKR. And then you kind of start brainstorming. Hey, what can we do to solve this? Let's start getting some of these ideas. Let's address some of those concerns. And then you can get to a really clear way forward. So I found it just kind of organically
happens. That's great. And do you have any advice for managers as they leverage it? Have you found any questions extremely useful in the model, or anything that you want to offer as additional advice?
I think first of all, listen to the roadblocks that your team members bring up, because that's always going to be back of their mind. How do I get over this roadblock? So if you listen to them up front as you build the plan by discussing the options and the way forward, you can proactively address those, or say, hey, listen, let's set that aside. We're not going to be able to address that now, and not get hung up on it. So I think that's a really important thing. And again, the context with the overall OKRs, as well as how it fits in with other teams, and the alignment we have with other teams or not. In some cases, we don't have great alignment. We're growing really quickly. There's a lot of new things hitting us. To be aware of that and make that part of the conversation is also really important.
And it just sounds like it's living up to one of our values of transparency, right? And laying everything on the table, and being able to really kind of discuss the problem holistically has been helpful, it sounds like, for you and your team.
Yeah.
Any questions for Ed on how he's used the model in practice?
Hey, Ed, it's Tim. Did you know the GROW model before you got here?
I did not.
Okay. What were you, if you think about sort of the philosophical approach that you might have used prior to learning the GROW, what was it? Just so I know kind of what you used to replace, or what you replaced.
I didn't have like a formal model, but this is kind of the process that I went through. As I said, just kind of organically, this is the way I think. I do like to listen up front and make sure that I understand some of the, kind of the landscape before we start getting too deep into solving problems.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Ed, of the acronyms, or of the letters in the acronym, which is the toughest and why?
I think the reality is probably the toughest, because that's where you need to be transparent and acknowledge that there are some shortfalls in resources, in alignment, in timing, or whatever it might be. And it's good to have those harder conversations up front, so that when you're getting into options, you're like, okay, let's set that aside, or let's address that head on, and you can have that more realistic conversation as you get through the options.
Hey Ed, so we kind of manage ourselves as a business using OKRs, and this is kind of a similar framework in identifying what the outcome is and how to get there. How do you make sure how do you differentiate between the business kind of rigid OKRs and more of I feel like the GROW model has more of a softer edge to it, that has more personal touch. How do you kind of manage those two in parallel?
So the way I use the OKRs as generally the primary goals. I mean, that's where a lot of we'll have the conversations on. The goal is aligned with the OKR, and then we can get into the softer conversations. Okay, let's talk about what you're seeing, what you're concerns are, what ideas you have. And you can drop into the software conversation through that, and then the options, and then the way forward gets concrete again. So, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's what we need to put into, our OKR epic as far as our next steps and concrete things we're going to do, so that we can track those. So it kind of goes, concrete with the OKR and with the goal, and then you kind of have your software discussions, and then with way forward you're getting concrete again.
Love that. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Ed, for being our field manager spotlight for this training. Appreciate the context and the real life application of the model. So thank you.
My pleasure.